Okay, this video is going to focus on day supply and some practice problems involving that. So we do have a formula for our day supply. It is the quantity to dispense in the same units as the dose divided by dose times frequency. Now notice dose times frequency is inside of parentheses. That means we need to do that math first. So let's look at an example. All right, so let's say we have an order for Pamelor 75 milligrams. Quantity of 50 is to be dispensed, and the directions call for 1 PO/BID. So our quantity to dispense in this case is 50. My dose in this case is 1. And we're talking in the form of tablets or capsules right now, so that is the same unit of measure for my quantity and my dose. What's my frequency? How often is this taken? Twice a day. So 1 times 2 is going to give us 2. Just going to jot that there. So that means we're dividing the 50 by 2. 50 by 2 is 25. So with this prescription, the way it is ordered, should last 25 days. That is what we would bill the insurance. Okay, so let's look at this next example. We have Coletra 100 over 25 milligram. Directions call for 1 to 2 PO/BID with food, and we are dispensing number 360. So remember our formula for calculating day supply. We're going to start with that quantity to be dispensed in the same units as the dose. In this case, we're talking pills, so 360 divided by dose times frequency. What is the dose? What are we going to use for the dose on this order? 2, because it is the larger number. We're going to allow that patient to take the max that the doctor is allowed in the prescription. So my dose becomes 2. What is my frequency in this order? Our frequency is the BID, which occurs how many times in a 24-hour period? Twice. 2 times 2 gives us 4. 360 divided by 4 is 90-day supply. Day supply calculations are extremely important because it matters to the insurance, and it's also going to affect when they can have their next refill. So these calculations are very important. And let's look at how calculating day supply works when we're talking about an injectable such as an insulin. So we have an order here that calls for Lantus, and the directions say to inject 35 units subcutaneously every morning and every night at bedtime. We are dispensing a 10 milliliter vial, and there's a notation there just to remind you that each milliliter contains 100 units. So first thing we need to do is convert my total quantity into the same units as my dose, correct? So we have 100 units per milliliter, and I have 10 milliliters. That simply means we're going to take that 100 and we are going to multiply that by 10 to tell you that we have 1,000 units in that 10 milliliter vial. Just going to add that little notation for our educational purposes. So we're going to start with our total quantity in the same units as our dose. And we're going to divide that by our dose, which in this case is 35 units, times my frequency. How often is this dose being given? every morning and every night at bedtime. So that is 2 times in a 24-hour period, right? So 35 times 2, which is 70. So I need to divide that 1,000 units by the 70 units that is being utilized per day. And that tells me that one vial is not going to get this patient very far. They probably need a second vial. This comes out to, on my calculator, it's 14.285714. But remember, when we calculate days supply, we do not round. We stop at the last whole number. So 14 days is what we would bill the insurance. And it's also the, most insurance is going to require the patient be at least 75% through with the medication. So before they can refill it again. So if this patient needs this much insulin, right, they're going to be back in 2 weeks to get another refill of this because that's all it's going to last them. Okay, let's look at an example of calculating a day supply for a nasal spray. So here we have an order that calls for Flonase, and in parentheses there, it lets you know that each bottle of Flonase contains 200 accuations or sprays, if you will. And we are dispensing one bottle with the directions of 1 to 2 sprays, IEN, BID. IEN is in each nostril, BID twice a day. So we're going to start with the original or the total quantity in the same units as our dose. So instead of putting one bottle as our total quantity, we're going to use the 200 sprays that are available in that bottle. Now, what am I going to use for the dose? How much medication is this person using at one single time? Your first inclination may be to go with 2, right? Because 1 to 2, we want the patient to be able to utilize this at the maximum amount that the doctor has allowed for the prescription. However, we are doing these 2 sprays in each nostril, which is going to double that up. So we're doing 2 sprays in one nostril, 2 sprays in the other nostril. That is a total of 4 sprays per dose. Next, I need to look at my frequency. How often are we doing these 2 sprays in each nostril? And that is right there, BID, which is twice a day. So 4 times 2, and that's going to equal 8. So 200 divided by 8. This bottle of Flonase should last the individual 25 days as prescribed. Okay, now we have an example of calculating day supply with an eye drop. So remember, first of all, when we calculate drops, that there are 20 drops per milliliter. That is what we use here for educational purposes. I am fully aware that out there in the real world, some pharmacies use 15. That's just to allow for like the elderly that miss their eye and they have to get a second drop in, things of that nature. So that's totally okay. But for educational purposes, we are going to use 20 drops per milliliter. That is the standard that PTCB will use for the national exam. So we have an order here where we are dispensing 5 milliliters of Vigamox, and our directions call for 1 drop in the left eye 3 times a day. So I didn't give you both eyes on this one. If this were an OU, we would have to remember that, it would become 2 drops. Just know that. All right. So if I've got 20 drops per milliliter and I have 5 milliliters, I have 5 times 20, 100 total drops in this bottle, right? My dose is in the form of drops already. And since I'm only doing that in one eye, my dose is 1. What's my frequency? That's going to be the TID. which is 3 times a day. 1 times 3 is 3. So 100 divided by 3. I get 33.3, but remember, with day supply, we do not round. We stop at the last whole number. So 33 days is how we would bill this insurance. Here is an example of calculating day supply for a cream. So we have Lamisil cream. We're dispensing 30 grams, and the directions call for applying to affected area BID, or twice a day. So, what is my total quantity? 30 grams. What's my dose? AAA, apply to affected area. So what am I going to use for my dose? So when it comes to creams, if it is not specified, we are to presume that they are only using 1 gram per dose. Sometimes the doctors will tell them, apply 5 grams, apply 3 grams. So in those cases, we will use what the doctor provides. But when the doctor just says something like apply to affected area, we're going to presume it is 1 gram. So that is my dose. What's my frequency? BID, and that is twice a day. So 1 times 2 is 2. So 30 divided by 2 is a 15-day supply. Okay, here we have an order for a nebulizer solution. We have albuterol 0.083% nebulizer solution. We are dispensing 1 box, and in parentheses there, it lets you know that each box contains 25 3 ml ampules. And then your directions call for the patient to nebulize 1 ampule 4 times a day as needed for shortness of breath. So, first thing we need to do is convert the dispense quantity from 1 box into milliliters or ampules, either one. I tend to do milliliters because we cannot bill the insurance company for ampules. We have to bill them by the milliliters. So 25 times 3 gives me 75, right? That's my quantity for the 1 box in milliliters. So I need to also convert my dose into milliliters as well. We're only using 1 ampule, which is 3 milliliters, right? So that's how we handle that. Next thing we need to do is establish the frequency. In this case is QID, which stands for how many times a day? 4. 3 times 4 gives us 12. So we need to divide 75 by 12. Which comes to 6.25 on my calculator. Again, with day supply, we do not round. We stop at the last whole number. So we would bill this in as a 6-day supply. And this one is an example of a traditional liquid that we are going to solve for the day supply. So we have amoxicillin 250 milligram per 5 ml. That just means that for each teaspoon of medication, there is 250 milligrams of active ingredient. And we are dispensing a quantity of 150 ml with directions of 1 teaspoon by mouth 3 times a day, TID. So because my quantity is already expressed as milliliters, I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. But because I left that alone, I'm going to convert my dose into milliliters because my dose and my quantity need to be the same units. So 1 teaspoon has how many milliliters? 5 ml. That come out of the 1 teaspoon. And the frequency is So we get 5 times 3, which is 15. And 150 divided by 15. And that is a 10-day supply. I hope this has helped you with calculating day supply.